I always thought I knew what love was. But standing there, in the dimly lit corridor of my office, feeling Alex's gaze on me, I realized I had no clue. It was like being on a roller coaster that I never bought a ticket for. "Emily, are we okay?" Alex asked, his voice filled with a concern that made my heart skip. I nodded, trying to steady my breath. "Yeah, just overwhelmed, I guess." He stepped closer, his presence a mix of comfort and chaos. "I get it. These late nights, they're taking a toll on all of us." I laughed, a sound more nervous than joyful. "Tell me about it. I hardly see David awake these days." The mention of my husband shifted the air between us. Alex's eyes dimmed slightly. "How's he doing with all this?" I shrugged, avoiding Alex's probing gaze. "He's David, you know, always busy with his own stuff." "Emily," he said softly, and I could feel the unspoken words hanging between us, heavy and undeniable. We were interrupted by the sudden buzzing of my phone. A text from David. "Working late, don't wait up." It was the usual, yet tonight, it stung more sharply. Alex glanced at the screen and then back at me. His look was sympathetic, but there was something else, a flicker of something more. "Long night ahead?" he asked, breaking the silence that had enveloped us. I sighed, tucking my phone away. "Isn't it always?" He hesitated, then said, "Want some company? We could grab a coffee, keep the engines running." I knew I should say no. I knew this was crossing a line, even if it was just coffee. But the thought of another night alone, waiting for a husband who was always absent, made the decision for me. "Sure," I said, a bit too quickly. "Coffee sounds good." As we walked to the nearby cafe, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement, mixed with a twinge of guilt. Alex and I had always been just colleagues. But recently, our conversations had drifted into personal territories. The cafe was cozy, a stark contrast to the sterile office environment. We found a quiet corner, the kind where secrets could be shared without the fear of being overheard. "So, Emily," Alex began, stirring his coffee, "tell me something about you that no one at the office knows." I hesitated, biting my lip. There was so much he didn't know. About my dreams, my fears, the growing chasm in my marriage. But those were truths too raw, too real to voice. Instead, I opted for a safer revelation. I used to be in a band in college. Lead singer. His eyebrows shot up. "Really? I can't imagine you, Ms. Corporate, rocking out on a stage." I laughed, the sound more genuine this time. "Yeah, well, life had other plans." We talked for what seemed like hours, about everything and nothing. The conversation flowed effortlessly, a dance of words and laughter. As we left the cafe, the night felt different, like a chapter had closed and another was waiting to be written. I looked at Alex, his face illuminated by the streetlights, and felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name. It was dangerous, this path I was on. Yet, for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Walking back to the office, I knew things were about to change. I just didn't know how much. "Alex just gets me, you know?" I mumbled to my reflection in the mirror. It was a Saturday morning, and I was talking to myself again. A habit I picked up since my conversations with David became monosyllabic. The mirror showed a woman caught in a whirlwind of emotions, hair disheveled, eyes searching for answers. I met Alex 6 months ago, but it felt like I'd known him forever. He was the new guy at work, and somehow, we clicked instantly. David, my husband, was the complete opposite of Alex, reserved, focused on his work, and lately, it seemed like he was living in a different universe. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my reverie. It was Sarah, my childhood friend and the only person I could talk to about this mess. "Hey, you look conflicted," Sarah said, stepping inside. She had this way of reading me like an open book. I sighed, pouring us coffee. "I'm just confused. Alex, he understands me. We talk about everything, and he listens. Sarah really listens." Sarah sipped her coffee, her expression thoughtful. "But what about David? You guys used to be inseparable." I fiddled with my cup. "David's always busy. He doesn't even notice me anymore. With Alex, I feel alive." She leaned in, her eyes serious. "Emily, be careful. These things, they can spiral out of control before you realize it." Her words echoed in my mind all day. That evening, David was home, a rare occurrence these days. He was in the kitchen, trying to cook something. It smelled like burnt pasta. I watched him for a moment. Once, this would have made me laugh, as cooking together, making a mess. Now, it felt like watching a scene from someone else's life. "David," I began hesitantly, "can we talk?" He looked up, surprised. "Sure. What's up?" "It's just, we don't talk anymore. I miss us, David. I miss how we used to be." He turned off the stove, his face unreadable. "I've been busy, Em. You know how it is with my job." I nodded, feeling the gap between us widening. "Yeah, I know. It's just that I feel alone, even when you're here." He reached out, touching my hand lightly. "I'll try to be more present, Em. I promise." We ate dinner in silence, the unsaid words piling up like the dirty dishes in the sink. Later that night, I lay awake, David's steady breathing beside me. My mind wandered to Alex, his easy smile, his laugh that made my heart flutter. It was wrong, I knew it, but it was like being caught in a current, unable to fight the pull. Sarah's warning rang in my ears. Be careful. I needed to sort out my feelings, understand this connection with Alex. Was it just a fleeting infatuation, or something more? The moonlight streamed through the window, casting shadows across the room. In its pale light, I realized that I was at a crossroads, each path leading to a future unknown. I had to make a choice. But not tonight. Tonight, I would let the world be, let my heart rest in the quiet before the storm. As sleep finally claimed me, I knew the coming days would bring decisions that could change everything. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. You can't keep doing this, Em. Sarah's voice crackled through the phone, breaking the silence of my dimly lit kitchen. I clutched the phone tighter, the weight of her words sinking in. It was late, way past midnight, and I was alone, as usual. David was on another business trip, and Alex. Well, he was probably home, alone too. I know, Sarah, I whispered, staring out the window at the shadowy outlines of the neighborhood. But it's not that simple. I feel like I'm in too deep. Sarah sighed, her frustration evident even through the phone. You need to think about the consequences, Emily. This isn't just about you and Alex anymore. It's about your marriage, your life. She was right, of course. My affair with Alex had started as a simple connection, two colleagues finding solace in each other's company. But it had grown into something I couldn't control, a force that pulled me away from the life I had built with David. I don't know how to stop it, I admitted, a lone tear trailing down my cheek. It's like I'm on this path and I can't turn back. You always have a choice, Em. Remember that. We said our goodbyes, and I was left with the silence of the house, a silence that echoed the emptiness inside me. The next day at work, I tried to keep my distance from Alex, but it was like trying to avoid the sun in the desert. He sensed something was off and cornered me in the break room. Is everything okay, Emily? He asked, his blue eyes searching mine. I nodded, a lie that tasted bitter. Yeah, just tired, you know? He didn't seem convinced but didn't push further. We spent the day wrapped in an awkward dance of avoidance and stolen glances. That night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed. It was a text from David, coming home early. We need to talk. My heart stopped for a beat. David never came home early. And, we need to talk, was never a good sign. I barely slept, tossing and turning, a myriad of scenarios playing out in my head. When David finally arrived the next evening, his face was an unreadable mask. He sat down at the dining table, his hands clasped tightly together. Emily, I found something on your phone, he began, his voice steady but cold. A message from Alex. It was more than friendly. I felt the room spin around me. The message. I had been careless, too caught up in the thrill of the affair. David, Words failed me. How could I explain something I didn't fully understand myself? He held up his hand, stopping my stammering attempts at an explanation. I don't want to hear it, Emily. I just want to know one thing. Do you love him? The question hit me like a physical blow. Did I love Alex, or was it just an escape from the reality of my failing marriage? David, I don't know, I said, the truth finally spilling out. I'm lost. I never meant for any of this to happen. David stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't do this, Emily. I can't be in a marriage where I'm constantly wondering if my wife is thinking about another man. He walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the shattered pieces of our life together. In that moment, I realized the gravity of what I had done. My affair with Alex hadn't just been a series of secret meetings and whispered promises. It was a choice that had led me to this point, sitting alone at a table set for two, with a husband who could no longer look at me the same way. I had reached a crossroads, and the path I had chosen had led me to a place of loneliness and regret. And now, I had to live with the consequences of that choice. I never thought silence could be so loud, I murmured to myself, staring at the empty chair across the kitchen table. It's been 2 weeks since David left, and the house felt like a ghost of what it used to be. Every corner echoed with memories, each one a sharp reminder of the life I had dismantled piece by piece. The divorce papers lay unopened on the counter, a stark, white symbol of my failed marriage. David's lawyer had sent them over, and just seeing the envelope made my stomach churn. I knew I should open them, start the process, but every fiber of my being resisted. It was like signing off the final chapter of a book I wasn't ready to close. Work had become my only refuge, a place where I could pretend to be someone else, someone who wasn't in the midst of a personal crisis. But even there, things were off. Alex and I, once so close, now danced around each other, careful not to cross the invisible line that had somehow formed between us. Hey, Emily, Alex greeted me one morning, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I forced a smile back. Morning, Alex. The small talk felt strained, a far cry from the deep, soul-bearing conversations we used to have. I couldn't help but wonder if our connection had been nothing more than a product of our circumstances, a shared loneliness that had brought us together. Lunchtime came, and I found myself alone in the break room. The solitude was a relief, a chance to gather my thoughts without the weight of Alex's gaze or the whispered speculations of our coworkers. I took out my phone, scrolling through old photos. There was one of David and me at the beach, his arm wrapped around me, both of us grinning at the camera. A pang of regret hit me, sharp and unexpected. I had loved him once, fiercely and wholeheartedly. But somewhere along the way, I had lost myself, lost us. The ping of a text message pulled me back to the present. It was from Alex. "Can we talk? After work?" I stared at the screen, unsure of what to say. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to bury my head in the sand. But another part, the part that had gotten me into this mess in the first place, was curious, hungry for the connection I had once felt so strongly. "Okay." I typed back, my heart racing. The rest of the day passed in a blur. As the office emptied, I found myself standing in the parking lot, waiting for Alex. The cool evening air did nothing to calm my nerves. He walked up to me, his hands in his pockets, his expression serious. "Emily, we need to talk about us." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. I nodded, bracing myself for what was to come. "I can't do this anymore," Alex said, his voice low. Whatever this is, it's not fair to you, or to me." His words stung, but they also rang with a truth I couldn't deny. Our relationship, if you could even call it that, had been built on a foundation of escapism, a distraction from the realities we were both facing. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity for the first time in months. "You're right, Alex. This was a mistake. We both got caught up in something that wasn't real." He nodded, a look of relief crossing his face. "I'm sorry, Emily. I truly am." As he walked away, I felt a strange sense of peace. It was over, the affair, the lies, the sneaking around. All that was left now was the aftermath, the task of rebuilding my life from the rubble I had created. I drove home in silence, the streets empty and dark. The house greeted me with its familiar, hollow echo. I sat at the kitchen table, the divorce papers still unopened, and for the first time, allowed myself to truly feel the weight of my choices. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and hardships. But it was also a chance for redemption, a chance to find myself again, to learn from my mistakes and move forward. As I finally tore open the envelope, I knew one thing for sure. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one that I would write with eyes wide open, fully aware of the echoes of my choices. Starting over isn't just an option, it's a necessity, I whispered to myself, standing amidst the scattered remnants of a life I once knew. The walls of my once shared apartment with David now echoed with a silence that spoke louder than any argument we ever had. It had been a month since the divorce was finalized, and with each passing day, the reality of my new life was setting in. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was surrounded by boxes, some filled with memories I wanted to keep, others with those I wished I could forget. The picture of David and me in Paris, our first vacation together, found its way into the keep box. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to let go of the good times. My phone rang, disrupting the quiet. It was Sarah, checking in as she did every few days. "Hey, how's the packing going?" she asked, her voice a mix of concern and optimism. "It's going, slowly but surely," I replied, forcing a smile into my voice. "You know, it's okay to feel lost right now. What you're going through, it's a lot." Her words were a balm, and I found myself confiding in her about the roller coaster of emotions I was experiencing, the guilt, the sadness, and surprisingly, sparks of excitement for what lay ahead. "I'm thinking of moving to a new apartment, maybe even a new city," I said, the idea sounding more real as I spoke it aloud. "That sounds like a fresh start, just what you need." We talked a little longer, her words lifting my spirits. After hanging up, I returned to my packing, a renewed sense of purpose guiding me. The next day at work, I handed in my resignation. My boss was understanding, even supportive. "Sometimes, you need to step back to move forward," he said, offering a handshake. As I left the office for the last time, a sense of liberation washed over me. I was leaving behind more than just a job. I was leaving behind a chapter of my life that was filled with mistakes and lessons learned. The following week was a blur of activity. I found a cozy, sunlit apartment in a different part of the city and started the process of moving in. It was smaller than the place I shared with David, but it felt right, it was mine, and mine alone. As I unpacked my belongings, each item found its place in my new space, just as I was finding my place in this new phase of life. The walls were bare, waiting to be filled with new memories, new dreams. One evening, as I sat on my new balcony, a cup of tea in hand, I realized something important. I had spent so long defining myself through my relationships, with David, with Alex, that I had lost sight of who I was on my own. It was time to rediscover Emily, the woman who loved to paint, who laughed loudly at bad jokes, and who once dreamed of writing a book. I picked up a notebook and began to write, not about heartache or regret, but about hope and possibility. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with uncharted paths and new beginnings. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it head-on. I was no longer the woman who needed someone else to complete her. I was Emily, whole and complete on her own, embarking on a journey to find herself again. And as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I knew that this was just the beginning. The beginning of a story that was mine to write, in a life that was mine to live. Who knew freedom could feel so daunting? I mused aloud, staring at the array of bills sprawled across my kitchen table. It was a sunny Tuesday morning, but the rays of light streaming through my window seemed to mock rather than comfort me. Post-divorce life hadn't just brought emotional challenges, it came with a set of financial burdens I hadn't fully anticipated. I picked up my phone, scrolling through job listings. I needed something new, something that would not only pay the bills but also bring back a sense of purpose that had been missing from my life. My career had once been a source of pride, but now, it felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by personal turmoil. A notification popped up. An email from a local community center looking for an art instructor. My heart skipped a beat. Art had been my passion in college, a dream I had shelved in pursuit of a more practical career. This could be a chance to reconnect with that part of myself. I typed out a response, my fingers trembling slightly with excitement and nervousness. It was a part-time position, but it was a start, a step towards rebuilding my life on my own terms. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of activity. I cleaned out the clutter in my apartment, each item I discarded feeling like shedding a layer of my old life. By evening, I felt lighter, more in control. The next few weeks were a blur of change. I started teaching art classes, and to my surprise, I loved it. The joy of creating, of helping others express themselves through art, was more fulfilling than I had imagined. My students, a mix of enthusiastic children and adults seeking a creative outlet, brought a new energy into my life. But it wasn't just about the job. I was learning to navigate life on my own, from managing finances to making decisions without relying on someone else's approval. It was scary at times, but also liberating. One evening, as I walked home from a class, I bumped into an old friend, Jenna. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. Most of our mutual friends had taken David's side. "Emily," Jenna exclaimed, genuine surprise in her voice. "How have you been?" I hesitated, then decided to be honest. "It's been tough, but I'm getting there. How about you?" We talked briefly, our conversation a tentative dance around the elephant in the room. As we parted ways, Jenna said something that stayed with me. "It's good to see you finding your way, Emily. It takes courage to start over." Her words echoed in my mind as I continued my walk home. I realized that this journey wasn't just about overcoming financial struggles or finding a new job. It was about proving to myself that I could stand on my own, that I could make mistakes and learn from them, that I could face the consequences of my actions and still move forward. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the future. It was uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities. But I felt a sense of hope, a belief that no matter what lay ahead, I had the strength to face it. I was no longer the woman who needed someone else to validate her existence. I was Emily, flawed and resilient, walking an unfamiliar road, but one that was unmistakably mine. And with each step, I was learning, growing, becoming the person I was meant to be. Turns out, life's got a funny way of throwing curveballs, I said to myself, gazing at the bustling city from my apartment window. The sky was a canvas of oranges and purples as the sun set, marking the end of another day in my journey of self-reinvention. It had been 6 months since David and I said our final goodbyes. That day was etched in my memory, a mix of sorrow and relief, like a storm leaving a clear sky in its wake. We had met at our favorite cafe, the air heavy with unspoken words. When he left, there was a finality to his steps, a silent acknowledgement that our chapter had closed. Since then, I had been rebuilding my life, piece by piece. The art classes at the community center were flourishing, and I had even started a small online business selling my paintings. Each brushstroke was a testament to my healing, a blend of past pains and newfound joys. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from my sister, Laura. "Hey, Em, Mom's asking about Thanksgiving. Are you coming this year?" I hesitated. My family had been a complicated equation since the divorce. I had stayed away, too ashamed to face their disappointment. But now, it felt like time to mend those bridges. "Yeah, I'll be there," I replied, a flicker of nervousness in my chest. The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were a whirlwind. I prepared a small collection of paintings for an upcoming exhibition, juggling it with my teaching schedule. The nights were long, but there was a fulfillment in this busyness, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and I found myself at my parents' doorstep, a pie in hand, heart pounding in my chest. The door opened, and there was my mother, her eyes misting over as she pulled me into a tight hug. The day was a blend of awkward conversations and warm embraces. I could feel the unspoken questions in their glances, but there was also an undercurrent of love, a silent support that whispered, "We're still here for you." As we sat around the dinner table, I realized how much I had missed the laughter, the chatter, the feeling of belonging. I shared stories of my art classes, my students, and even my plans for the future. There was a genuine interest in their eyes, a sign that maybe, just maybe, we were turning a new page. That night, as I lay in my old room, surrounded by memories of a simpler time, I reflected on the journey I had been on. Life had thrown me into deep waters, but I had learned to swim, to find my way to the shore. I had learned the hard lessons that happiness was a personal journey, that choices came with consequences, and that forgiveness was a gift you gave yourself. But most importantly, I had learned that change, though terrifying, was also the doorway to new beginnings. As the first light of dawn crept into my room, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges and possibilities. But I was ready to face it, armed with the lessons of my past and the hope for a future that was mine to shape. I was Emily, not defined by my mistakes or my successes, but by the strength to keep moving forward, to weave the tapestry of my life into something beautiful and uniquely mine. And as I looked towards the horizon, I knew that the best